All right, hello everyone, and thank you for tuning in once again to the Black Box Podcast, BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. Today it's another Zodiac Killer upload, and at least once a week on this channel, I'm hoping to do a Q&A session where I read off your questions and comments, and we have a little bit of a discussion about it. Now, what I would say about the Zodiac Killer is, and we've been covering the Zodiac since 2017 on this channel, is there are about maybe four types of questions and comments that I'm normally getting from people talking about the Zodiac. The first is that people are telling me they believe it's Arthur Lee Allen. The second is people are telling me they believe it was Ross Sullivan who was the Zodiac Killer. The third is that they're telling me that it was a group of people, what I like to call the group murder theory, that multiple people were involved with committing the Zodiac murders, as well as just some other things, some more conspiratorial things surrounding that. And the fourth type is people just telling me that I'm an idiot, I don't know what I'm talking about, and just shut up. And all I can say to those people is, I'm just shaking in my boots, name calling on the internet. I mean, if you want to challenge some things, let's duke it out in the comments section. But to all you guys who are leaving constructive comments, bring it on. And if you do want to call me out for ridiculous things that I've said on this channel, look to my uploads and theories about the disappearance of Brandon Lawson. And in those particular instances, I deserve it. But, this is an ongoing process. These are unsolved cases. I don't know everything. And yes, I'm completely open to correction all the time. But I thought it was very interesting that I got so many comments coming in about Arthur Lee Allen, of course, yes, but Ross Sullivan, definitely. A lot of people have been really encouraging me to really do more about Ross Sullivan, or just saying that they really believe that Ross Sullivan was the Zodiac Killer. And I guess there's almost like a handful of other people that are kind of in this dichotomy where they say that Ross Sullivan was the murderer of Sherry Jo Bates back in Riverside, California, 1966. Murdered on October 30th. Her body was found on Halloween morning, and they believe that was Ross Sullivan. But the Zodiac Killer was somebody else. Now let's get to some of your comments here. And the first one is coming to us from Ali Zappa McMinn. And Ali writes that, I read somewhere that Allen was in a party of Darlene Ferrin's that she herself had organized. Her friends remembered him as socially awkward, that's socially awkward in quotation marks, because he wouldn't talk to anyone. If I'm not mistaken, that was also stated in the 2007 film by David Fincher. It's been a long time since I've mentioned the David Fincher film, since I've seen that one, so I don't recall that specific detail, but they definitely talked about the proximity of Darlene Ferrin to Arthur Lee Allen. And, Arthur Lee Allen was an awkward guy. The only thing that I have to say to this, and it's not that I disagree with Ali Zappa's statement, even if everything that she's saying, is just kind of correct, who doesn't have a first-hand connection to Darlene Ferrin? We did an upload talking about the Darlene Ferrin conspiracy theories, and Darlene Ferrin's sister was somewhat involved with spreading a lot of information about Darlene and the Zodiac Killer, and just talking so much on talk shows. She was really kind of caught up in the media attention sphere. There are a lot of things that are going on with Darlene Ferrin being the epicenter of Zodiac conspiracies, right? Arthur Lee Allen apparently has multiple first-hand connections to her. But what about Louis Myers working in the same restaurant that Darlene Ferrin worked in? What about Lawrence Kane possibly harassing Darlene Ferrin in the restaurant? And Darlene Ferrin's sister, once again, was the person who said that it was Lawrence Kane. What about the theory that George Russell Tucker was a frequent customer in Darlene Ferrin's restaurant? Everybody has a first-hand connection to Darlene Ferrin. And, it's like, and there really are kind of just things like that. Everyone just has these small interactions. The only thing I would say about Louis Myers is that interaction was a little bit more substantial. And a certain individual that we have not mentioned yet, named Richard Joseph Gaikowski, who was allegedly in Albany the same time Darlene Ferrin was. Everyone has a first-hand connection to Darlene Ferrin. Now, I did an upload about the possibility of George Hill Hodel being the Zodiac Killer. And, this is one where it's like someone has presented the idea. Someone has written a book about it. His name is Steve Hodel, the son of George Hill Hodel. The book is called Most Evil Part 2. And I had one comment just saying there's no possible way he was the Zodiac Killer. Let's move on. And all I have to say about stuff like that is, someone has proposed the theory. They have proposed that he was a suspect, and we're going to cover just as many suspects as we can and cover as many people as we can. It's like if someone has proposed the idea, I will discuss it. There's a 99.07 chance that George Hill Hodel was not the Zodiac Killer. I don't believe he was, but it's something out there. It's online, so I'll at least give it some coverage. But another one comes to us from Russell Cook saying that the George Hodel theory reminds me of how some people are convinced Edward Wayne Edwards has been responsible for every serial killing in the USA for the past 30 years. And I would actually cite the Trinity Killer on Dexter as another example of that. Someone who's conducting many different serial killings all over the country and not getting caught and such. But granted, Dexter's a fictional show, but that's kind of how it happened, and just people are overlooking things. But yes, that's the way the George Hill Hodel thing is. It's just, they're saying, by they, I mean it's mostly Steve Hodel, the son of George Hill Hodel, and a French teacher named Yves Persson from France, who were saying that George Hill Hodel murdered the Black Dahlia, he committed the lipstick murders in Chicago, he was the Zodiac Killer, he committed another murder in the Philippines. But George Hill Hodel was a surgeon, and if he did all those other murders, he didn't leave the same medical expertise knowledge that he left behind, that would have been left behind on the Zodiac victims. Now, our next comment comes to us from Kelly Gable. That's Gabel. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. All the Zodiac murders were committed near bodies of water. In one of the Zodiac's letters, the killer wrote that he used airplane cement on his fingertips. Robert Hansen, we're talking about Robert Christian Hansen, the butcher baker serial killer from Alaska, that is. Robert Hansen owned a plane. The Zodiac letters and ciphers said by fire, by rope, by gun, and by knife. All Robert Hansen's crimes involve one or more of these. This is on the thing about Robert Hansen being the Zodiac Killer. Once again, though, I don't see definitive certainty that Robert Christian Hansen was in the Bay Area in 1968 and 69, around the time of the murders. We know he left for Alaska in 1967, but, and granted, though, I mean, he could have taken the plane down from Anchorage to San Francisco, but that's not an easy flight, mind you. That's going to be like many hours. I remember that it was 3 hours to from Anchorage to Seattle about. So San Francisco must be like 5, maybe 4 or 5 or something like that. It's going to be a big flight. It's not something that you would want to do casually. But I think the bigger thing about this is all the Zodiac murders were committed near bodies of water. Well, what about the murder of Paul Stein? I mean, I know there's a fire hydrant there, and the Gareth Penn theory that it was done on Washington and Cherry Street, and wash from Washington is a body of water, WASH. Like, I mean, what about that one? Does that really fit into the bodies of water theory? I mean, one of the things, though, that we've really talked about with this is the body of water connection overrated? Is it possible that people were just having lovers' lanes, like, people are just going to the lovers' lanes, I mean, because they're near bodies of water, because the park has a body of water in it? I mean, is that so crazy that people are going to a park that also has a lake in it or a pond in it or something like that? I don't think that that's beyond belief. And also this, if you're going to entertain the body of water theory, how does that factor into the Kathleen Johns incident, the possible abduction? And like I said, we get a lot of comments about how the Zodiac could have been multiple people. One of them that I don't think I actually have that one in front of me now, but somebody was saying that it's like some people got together, they made a pact and an agreement that they were going to commit these murders, and it's like it was a group of guys, the group murder theory, but someone laid it out very nicely, just saying, because it seems like you're dealing with the thought process of many different people. I mean, granted, though, to that the last comment that we were just reading off, they did mention, though, that Robert Hansen did use a variety of methods, but mostly Robert Hansen killed his victims with a Ruger Mini 14 rifle, and the Zodiac used handguns, I would say that. Now, we have another one coming to us from Andrew WVA. I think that you're on point about the Zodiac pretending to be a researcher and later on hiding in plain sight. In 2010, I had a theory that Zodiac may have done this and looked through the Zodiac forum archives to see if I could find anyone that piqued my interest. I did find someone who went by Oscar and touched it off on a very long thread. Okay, so the first thing about a researcher is this was during the Gareth Penn upload. The deal with Gareth Penn is, okay, he didn't originally start out as a suspect. Gareth Penn was, of course, he's one of the most famous Zodiac researchers out there, but he became a suspect himself. Even one of the most famous videos about him online is just called Was Gareth Penn the Zodiac Killer? Or maybe it's called Is Gareth Penn the Zodiac Killer? And I mean, the thing that I was saying was, I could see that happening from the thought process of somebody like the Zodiac to just sort of tell people, okay, here's how it's done. Well, the killer must have done it like this. This must be the reason for all these letters and symbols. And just to kind of come forward and be like, aha, I solved the case. I mean, I could see that though, but I don't think that explains the psychological issues that we're dealing with all of these different backgrounds. I mean, I'm just not quite certain, though. I mean, that's just, something we were talking about. And once again, multiple people wrote to me about the possibility of Gareth Penn being the Zodiac Killer. And it's something that has been widely discussed. I do recall this Andrew WVA comment because I was reading up a little more about this person, Oscar, he's talking about. And I'm going through the forums. And I've mentioned on the channel before that I don't necessarily like forums too much because they kind of throw you on wild goose chases. And someone on the forum was saying that they believed that Richard Gaikowski was gay. Gay man in San Francisco? Impossible, right? Sarcasm. But it's like, I mean, I think, though, if Richard Gaikowski was indeed gay, and I haven't really found any confirming sources, just read one comment on a forum, maybe not the Zodiac Killer. Why do I say that? Because we deal with all this animosity toward women. I mean, look at all these Lover's Lane shootings. We just covered the case of the Doodler, the serial killer targeting gay men on this channel. I mean, that's what someone who's a homosexual does, who has that kind of animosity toward a particular partner who's like the scorned lover, the rejected lover, that sort of thing. Why would you target Lover's Lanes in that particular manner? I mean, I'm seeing a lot of animosity toward women in a romantic way. That's just me, though. I mean, I'm not a psychologist. It's just, that's kind of the impression that I get. Now, this is one comment. This is coming to us next. I don't have the name of it, just the text. So I'm sorry to the person who wrote this one, but I really wanted to talk about this one on the last Q&A because this is the person who wrote to me saying that the Zodiac was a hoax. The Zodiac Killer never existed, and it was a hoax created by the San Francisco Chronicle in order to sell newspapers, which is the object of the newspaper business in the first place. The crimes were separate. Sure, someone wrote the letters, but there's zero evidence that the author killed anybody. Zero. Anybody living at the time knows this and expressed it. Problem is, they're all dead now. Everyone is thinking that they leave. Oh, excuse me, the text got a little blurred for a second. Well, that it leaves a bunch of younger people believing that they read and hear that there was a real Zodiac Killer, but in reality, there wasn't. And to add to that, the current thinking that if enough people believe it, it's true. Well, I mean, what do we do with something like that? How do we unpack a comment like that? Someone is saying that the San Francisco Chronicle created this as a hoax, and that there was no Zodiac Killer. That's why the Zodiac has never been caught, because this was not one person. This is maybe one person writing the letters, but they're just taking credit for the murders of various people. But then I'm like, well, where do we get the Zodiac hood icon, like the hood that the perpetrator is wearing? Not to mention all of the similarities, and I guess what they're trying to say is they would genuinely believe that people were murdered, but you have somebody taking credit for murders that they didn't actually commit. That's a bold statement. It's kind of a variant of the group murder theory. It's just that we're kind of looking for multiple people instead of one. But, I mean, I need some more time to think about that. And someone wrote to that in months ago, and actually says here 6 months ago to be precise. But, I mean, that's a very bold statement that the Zodiac Killer never even existed. You just got somebody reading the newspapers, learning about unsolved murders, and then taking credit for them. Granted, though, it's possible that whoever the Zodiac Killer was, the Zodiac probably did confess to murders that were not actually committed by the Zodiac. Like, what about Sherry Joe Bates? I mean, we are not 100% sure that the Zodiac actually committed that murder. If you were to ask me, I would say I don't believe that was Zodiac activity. Why? Because it's quite a different murder. Sherry Joe Bates was a vicious, kind of overpowering attack, and the Zodiac seems a little bit more methodical, more calculated. Sherry Joe Bates is pulling out the perpetrator's hair, ripped off his watch, like severed the watch band, and they're in just this vicious fight. And the Zodiac didn't seem like much of a fighter to me, as opposed to someone who was more thoughtful, methodical, calculated, and, flawless, in other words. But, okay, so that's kind of coming to the end of this episode. What do you think about any of the discussions that we've had so far? And please leave more comments. I want to hear from you. Let's talk a little bit more.